All offseason, Jeff Bell and I have been putting out some against the grain takes, and we're setting ourselves up today for where we could potentially be wrong. So, Jeff, what you and I did, fun little thought exercise. We started asking ourselves some questions today, saying, like, what if, and setting ourselves up for a potential bad run here. And let's just go ahead and dive right in. Where is one of these situations, like some things that we've talked about throughout the offseason, what is a way that this could potentially break not in our favor?
So are we going in order of this list that you put together, Dave, or you just want me to pull one out?
I don't know. Pull one out, man. I'll delete them from the list
I
as we talk about them.
the curse of 400 is real for Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
That's one where that I currently have Saquon Barkley as my running back one. I've been comfortably drafting him at or above ADP in some instances. I haven't been fading Saquon Barkley. I think that there's a very clear group of 6, and you're going to see that in most drafts. Maybe 7, you could make the argument 7, or maybe it is 6, and you just don't have one of the 6 of Justin Jefferson in your 6. That's fine, but that group of 6 being Saquon Barkley, Jamar Chase, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, and then Christian McCaffrey, and then Justin Jefferson in there, kind of that 6 or 7. And so one of the things I see a lot of people saying that they're fading Saquon Barkley. To be clear, I think it's really important to the audience out there that when people say they're fading Saquon Barkley, they're still probably taking him in the top 6 or 7 picks. I am seeing some things out of just some other leagues that he's falling to like the 110. I think that it could be really lost in the message when you say you're just fading Saquon Barkley and you're not giving context to that. That being said, the curse of this 400 being real, because the wear and tear that was put on his body last year was legitimate. And so would put me in position where I know for the football guys, for our staff league that we did, I took Saquon Barkley with the second pick in that draft. And if the curse of 400 is real, I could be cooked there.
Yeah, and I think like in Dynasty especially, I've just got him in this tier by himself. Like when I publish my Dynasty tiers and rankings, I've got the top 3 that I'm guessing you could imagine who's in there: Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and of course Ashton Jinty. And then I just have Saquon Barkley in this kind of tier by himself, which is exactly what I did last offseason with Christian McCaffrey, where I said, like, yeah, like by default, he's really, really good. And he probably projects to be the top scoring running back this year. But we saw this 2 years ago with Austin Eckler. We saw it last year with Christian McCaffrey. And I don't want to say it's going to happen this year with Saquon Barkley, but my goodness, when you're an aging running back, one little injury is enough for you to fall from like inside the top 5 to outside of the top 20 in the blink of an eye. And I think that's the fear with Saquon Barkley, is that like if he doesn't perform like he did last year, people are just going to say it's the end of the road for him. I'm still holding it down in my redraft rankings and in my best ball rankings. I've got him as my RB1 ahead of Bijan Robinson, ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs. He is such a good player on a good offense. The offensive line is fantastic. The threat of Jalen Hurts as a rusher just opens up even more lanes for him. They've got A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith keeping defenses honest and on their heels. So there's so much to like about Saquon Barkley, but it's also a very scary click when you're making that first round draft pick in best ball or redraft and you take Saquon Barkley knowing what has happened to players in similar situations over the past. So completely with you there. Let's move on to the next one, and I'll pick this one here, Jeff. What if Travis Hunter's role on defense impacts his fantasy production? And this is something that I've just like written off. I'm just like, you guys are crazy. Like James Gladstone, an offensive-minded guy, goes out and brings in Liam Cohen, an offensive-minded guy. What we've heard out of Jaguars camp is that this guy just has an extra set of lungs, never gets tired. He has said, I've done this in college. I'm going to be able to do it in the NFL. But then we hear players like Devontae Adams just like scoffing at the idea, like, no, there's no way he can do this. And we hear this from a lot of NFL players. I have very much so taken the Shohei Ohtani approach that, like, sure, we haven't seen it before, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. But what if it really can't be done? Like he's gassed on defense and then it impacts his offensive play and he ends up being, not 100% on either side of the ball. It's not something that I'm concerned about, but it's something that does kind of sit in the back of my mind. Jeff, are you concerned at all about this, or do you think that a lot of the people kind of parroting this narrative are just playing the game a little bit too scared?
I would say I'm probably less concerned about him being tired in doing it, and a little bit more concerned about so Travis Hunter. To understand Travis Hunter, coming out of high school, he was the top ranked defensive back. I think he was the
Mhm.
number one overall player in his class, but he's defensive back. And when he was a freshman, he was defensive back, a cornerback, and he played a little sprinkle of offense. His next year, he was still a cornerback, full time cornerback that got sprinkled in. And that Colorado team, his second year, they had Xavier Weaver. They had a couple other guys that are in the NFL now. So Shadur Sanders had multiple NFL receivers, and Travis Hunter was kind of able to step in as like that fourth receiver working in there to really give them. But he was an every down defensive player. This past year, winning the Heisman Trophy, he was an every down every player, and so it was really he's got 1 year at Colorado of being a full-time offensive player. And so I think I'm less concerned about him being the tired of it all and more concerned about
A Devin Hester,
they've,
perhaps, like when they've
well,
tried putting Devin Hester in as a NFL wide receiver and said, "Oh, this
some,
doesn't really work at the next level."
I think it will, I think it will work. I think the thing of it is though, is if he's so much better as a defensive back that they say you need to be on every snap on defense, and it's like the type of thing where like you're a full-time defensive player and we will sprinkle you in on offense a little bit, and so it's like you're getting just kind of nominal snaps there, and it's like saying like the development has to happen. We still envision you being this full-time player on offense, but you're right now you're NFL top 5 caliber cornerback, and so you're going to be that for our team right now, and we're going to give you some reps here on offense. But also we have Brian Thomas as our number one receiver. We've got Parker Washington, who we like. We've got Diami Brown, who we like. We've got
Brenton
proven NFL
Strange.
receivers here, and Brenton Strange as a target to be able to go to. So we'll sprinkle you in. We'll get you some snaps on offense, but you're full time on defense. You're getting ramped up. You're getting your feet wet. You're learning how to play the receiver position. You're not doing it full time to learn how to play the receiver position, but you are learning. You are playing full time on the defensive side. I think that's the concern on it. And so, like maybe the argument is like that would be similar as to the tired argument. I think might be less that and more how raw is he on the
Yeah.
offensive side, and against NFL caliber wide receivers that are polished, and knowing that Brian Thomas is going to be the primary target there, and versus what can he do as every single down defensive player.
This is such a weird show to have to do, kind of like playing devil's advocate with ourselves, but you make some good points there. And again, like I opened up this conversation by saying what if, but I do want to say that like I think the reason like I'll just put it out on the table right now. I've got Travis Hunter inside my top 20 redraft rankings, like inside my top 20 wide receivers, where a lot of people are kind of looking at him as this kind of boomer bust, let me take a chance on him as a wide receiver 4. I'm saying like if he's there in round 4, I'll take it because I think the ceiling is so high. I just see a player who is super twitched up, good route runner and has amazing ball skills. And they're not going to ask him to play outside and like beat guys in press coverage in his first week. They're going to play him out of the slot. They're going to put him in motion. They're going to find ways to get him open in space. So I don't know what I'm supposed to be saying on this show. This is weird. Like my mind is doing backflips right now because like I know we're supposed to be like, what if we're wrong? But we start talking about where I could be wrong, and I'm like, no, I want to be right. Like I love Travis Hunter. He's a great player. So let's move on to the next one, Jeff. You can pick the next one. Which one do you want to pull out here? What if?
For us, player of the show, what if Jameson Williams remains a sub 20% target share player?
Mm,
What if Jameson Williams doesn't take this step forward in terms of the involvement in the Lions offense? What if Isaac Tisla steps in there, and then you've got still Amon-Ra St. Brown getting his target share, and Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta, and so you kind of leave Jameson Williams more as a boom bust type of a player. That next step in development that we're anticipating so thoroughly doesn't happen. That would be I'm really I'm worried a little bit, just because I mean we're projecting that a player in an already full offense, an already offense that already needs to spread the ball around, is to continue going to grow his target share and continue to become more of a focal point within there. I mean, we have the belief that he is capability is there as a player, and it seems to step in line with his natural progression, but maybe it doesn't happen.
yeah, and that's certainly a fear because When it comes to like rankings, you and I doing our redraft rankings have both been very successful over the last couple of years in the expert consensus ranking contest. And you and I are higher on Jameson Williams than anybody else in the industry. Of the 200 plus rankers, like you and I are really, really sitting atop that right now. And then on top of that, in dynasty leagues, like I have been a strong proponent for tiering down, and I've done that with my Garrett Wilson shares and some other players where I'm trying to tier down to Jameson Williams and get additional capital on top because I see a very good player that I expect to take a step forward. Moving on from Tim Patrick today doesn't sound like a huge move, but that does turn Isaac Tesla into, or Tesla, I believe. I don't. I'll get it right by the end of this rookie season. I promise.
I'll never get
But
it right.
but it puts him out there as a full time player, and he can do a lot of the things that Jameson Williams does. Just a guy with game breaking speed, who they can get the ball on short little gimmicky touches. And I do wonder if a lot of those end arounds and slants and bubble screens that we've seen going JMO's way over the last couple of years, if they start going to Tesla, like it's certainly a real fear, not something that I'm panicking about. Like again, we're kind of playing devil's advocate with ourselves here. I still think he's going to be a very good player, but the floor is scary for a guy who has never eclipsed a 20% target share throughout his career.
Yeah, and playing devil's advocate off the devil's advocate off the devil's advocate, I think you could say that having Isaac Tesla get in there as a full time player, you're probably going to start him off as you want the blocking because he's a good physical player, but also just run down the field, buddy. Just run down the field and clear space, and that opens up underneath for more Jameson Williams. But I think in terms of route development, I don't know if Tesla would be there.
Yeah.
To be kind of the move them all around. And you would think in natural progression that Jameson Williams has kind of entered that stage of his career. But it's certainly interesting to talk about and think about because, yeah, they did trade Tim Patrick, and that does
Right.
kind of push their personnel into one direction.
And Jameson Williams, we know that he can be a well-rounded receiver, like we saw at Alabama and like we've seen in the training camp clips coming out. But he also got a lot of his production on the hook and ladders and the end arounds. And if those do start going to T-Slaw's way instead, then we could be looking at a scary floor there. So I'm gonna have to talk to the production team on this one. I wonder what we can get on a thumbnail. If it's like me and you with like little devil versions of ourselves on our shoulders. I don't know. We'll see what we can get here. But let's move on to the next one. I'll pick one out here. What if the Sam Darnold that we saw in New York is the Sam Darnold that we see in Seattle this year? I'm big on this Seattle offense, and I can't believe that I'm saying it. Like I have been drafting a lot of Sam Darnold late in my best ball leagues. Talk about aggressively tearing down for Jameson Williams. I've been tearing up and down to get as much Jackson Smith-Njigba as possible. I'm out here pounding the table for Torrey Horton, who I think could be that day 3 wide receiver that really steps up. Getting excited about the running backs too. Zach Charbonnet, a longtime favorite of mine. Ken Walker, a longtime favorite of mine. And I am heavily invested in this Seattle offense. And I did have some concerns early in the offseason because, it's Sam Darnold. And I think it's normal to have concerns about Sam Darnold, but, looked great last year. And all we have heard out of camp this year is that, like, Sam Darnold looks good. He's got command of the offense. He's a natural fit with Clint Kubiak. But we saw last year, the last 2 weeks of the season, Sam Darnold might have seen some ghosts out there on the NFL field, little flashbacks back to his time in New York, and we think that that player we saw for the first 16 weeks was a legitimate MVP frontrunner last year in Kevin O'Connell's offense. But what if that was just kind of a flash in the pan? Took people by surprise, was steering the ship on a good offense. And what if now in Seattle, behind a not as good offensive line, learning a new system, out from underneath Kevin O'Connell, what if Sam Darnold isn't good? That's a big fear that I have, and somewhere where I could be wrong on not just one player, but I'd be wrong on Jackson Smith-Njigba, Torrey Horton, Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, Elijah Arroyo. A lot of players that I'm heavily invested in the Seattle offense are really at the mercy of Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and we talked about on the show with Dan that we've been doing for training camps, our good friend Dan Hendry, I mentioned on there that early in camp, the Seahawks said, we're not going to have a quarterback controversy. We're not going to consider Jalen Milroe stepping in here this year. We're going to view this as a redshirt year. But if Darnold is really struggling and Drew Lock is the only other direction that they have to move, then maybe they do open up that potential. And if they do that, then you're looking at a very, very different offense of how much can Jackson Smith and Jigba get the volume that we're hoping that we see him getting in the third round there? And how much of these tertiary pieces, how much of the rushing attack can both running backs be involved? Does Jalen Milrow kind of clip it? Do they have all three going and they all clip kind of each other because they're forced to lean in that direction of running more? And then I think Kenneth Walker right now needs to pull some of his value out of the passing game. That was a step that we saw him take last year in his game in terms of the passing volume to live up to the expectations for his development and also fantasy potential. We need that involvement in the passing game. We see historically when rushing quarterbacks come in, the running backs don't tend to be super involved in the passing
Mhm.
game. And so I think that, yeah, I mean, if Sam Darnold's not able to deliver on this, and I mean, certainly they might try Drew Luck out there, but if it gets to the point where they're trying Drew Luck out there because Sam Darnold has gotten that bad, you would think the whole Jalen Milrow conversation would happen.
Yeah, and my guess is like if they do get to that point, the fans aren't going to want to see more of Drew Lock. Like they're going to be clamoring for Jalen Milrow. Like if Sam Darnold is bad, my guess is that we'd see Jalen Milrow out there. But again, based on the investments that I've made with my hard-earned American dollars this offseason, let's hope that Sam Darnold is good. All right, Jeff, pull out another one. What's another? What if we're wrong?
What if Justin Fields is just so bad that he gets benched and it's over?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is a player that we've both supported Justin Fields and believed in him. I believed in him since he was a rookie. I mean, that was really kind of when I first started doing content, was when he was coming out as a rookie, and being an Ohio State fan, but also being a football player, football analyst that likes to hold myself with a certain level of respect and bias removal. I saw the potential of Justin Fields, and obviously that didn't come to fruition all the way in Chicago. And we saw the move for Caleb Williams last year. He had a pretty strong start in Pittsburgh, but they still did go to Russell Wilson. They never went back to Justin Fields. Now this is his last best chance here as the Jets quarterback to be an NFL franchise quarterback. And this is really, he could go either direction. He could deliver on this, and the Jets say, we're great here. We've got our pieces in place with Justin Fields as our quarterback. Let's now build around him and build this out. Or it could be horrible, and they could say, we have to explore other options. We have to maybe put Tyrod Taylor in here just to be able to get some level of competent play at the quarterback position, and really kind of just derails a lot in terms of Justin Fields in fantasy, in maybe the offensive pieces around there. If this should be a very run heavy team, and Tyrod Taylor can bring some of that, but certainly you wouldn't have the similar threat of Justin Fields running the ball that potentially opens up some lanes for Breece Hall, for Braylon Allen, for Isaiah Davis, these three backs here behind that they're supposed to be using in New York, and really not having that efficiency of that rushing attack, the ability of that. I mean, all of those pieces would probably be dead picks at some level. And then, would Tyrod Taylor be able to support Garrett Wilson maybe better, maybe worse? It's a lot up in the air if Justin Fields were to be that bad.
And look at that last preseason game. 4 of 9 for 44 yards, or what was it? I think 4 of 9 for 46 yards. I'm sorry. Like if that's the type of passing that we're seeing from Justin Fields, I mean, I know Aaron Glenn. Like I gotta say, I really like what Aaron Glenn has done. Like he seems like that old school coach, and like really, sounds faithful behind his players, and like utmost trust in Justin Fields. And that's great at this point in the season. Like you want a coach that is going to trust the quarterback and give him the opportunity. But if they start out 0-5 and his seat starts getting a little bit warm, they're probably not going to stick with Justin Fields that long. So, like, yeah, we've told ourselves this story all offseason that, like, they are committed to Justin Fields. He went to this team because they're giving him an honest chance. But at the end of the day, Aaron Glenn does want to keep his first job as a head coach, and he isn't going to want to just, lose out and lose that job and be completely off the head coaching radar for the next decade. So, yeah, it is definitely something to worry about here. I think while he's out there playing, you're getting like top 10 production. But is that going to be for 5 weeks? Is it going to be for 10 weeks? Is it going to be for 17 weeks? I think that's the fear here. Something else that we got when we dug into his contract a little bit, I think a lot of people saw the 2-year contract and said, oh, this is great. Justin Fields is going to be a Jet for the next 2 years. But there was some interesting language in that contract where the guaranteed money really only goes through this year. And if they get to a point this season where they say, hey, Justin Fields just isn't really it, they can cut him and move on going into 2026 with a very minimal loss. So, a guy that, in Dynasty startups, I was taking in like round 7 and 8 this year because he is still a young player with immense rushing upside and he's going to have an opportunity as a starting job. But I do think that if things don't pan out this year, after it didn't work in Chicago, after it didn't work in Pittsburgh, if it doesn't work in New York, he's probably destined to be a career backup after this. So immense upside, but also immense downside, and that floor could fall out from under us pretty quickly here.
Yeah, and he is definitely at the absolute worst. He is a backup caliber quarterback at the worst. Like he can have
Yeah,
a long career as a backup, and he's got a great personality. I don't think there would be any concerns about that. But yeah, this is probably the very last time that a team gives him the opportunity to be that guy.
unless of course he crushes it, and then 2 years from now, another team will give
Yeah.
him an opportunity.
Well,
But
if he
yeah, no
crushes it,
team is
he's the Jets franchise quarterback, and
right.
everything is he's getting a new contract, and he's getting $150 million deal, and
And
they're
he's a
putting him
top
on
20
billboards
dynasty
in
pick,
Times
and
Square, and yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So scary. I mean, we know the upside, but again, and again, this is us. This show, man, like my mind is doing backflips right now because all we've done is like gush about Justin Fields this entire offseason. Now we're like, well, what if he actually sucks a week before the
yeah.
season kicks off? I don't know if this is our hedging show or what it is, but a fun one
It's definitely not a
nevertheless.
hedging show because we're not backing
We're
off of
not
these
changing our
things,
yeah, we're not changing our
but it's
rankings. I'm not
no, but I
reversing all
think
of my
it's
JSN trades.
yeah, I think it's a good process probably to
Mhm.
kind of have these and when you do the analysis and you're looking at these things and you're seeing for at least for me, I've got that voice in the back of my head like, well, maybe you're wrong here. And we try our very best to address that and answer that, and it becomes an uncomfortable conversation to say the things out loud, and especially to say the things out loud to an audience that we're thrilled and grateful for, and we've had a lot of fun with this and continue to build and grow. So that's an interesting thing to kind of put out there in the universe, and this is almost like a therapy session, Dave. Of like let's talk about the things that make us really uncomfortable.
It's like the 8 Mile, the B Rabbit rap where like Eminem comes out and says all of the bad things about himself before the guy can say them about him. That's kind of what we're doing
Yeah,
right now. Like, yeah, what if Justin Fields sucks? And what if Sam Darnold isn't good and the wheels fall off in Seattle? And let's try this one on for size, Jeff. I can't believe these words are about to come out of my mouth. My mouth is like watering right now. I feel like I'm gonna puke. What if Caleb Williams is a bust? Oh my gosh, I can't even like think about this. Like, this is my Bears fandom bleeding into this one as well. This would be detrimental, like to not just Caleb Williams, but to DJ Moore, to Roma Dunze, to Luther Burden, to Colston Loveland, to DeAndre Swift, and maybe even to Ben Johnson. Like, this would be horrific if things don't pan out for Caleb Williams. And I know you just talked about it, Jeff, last week or 2 weeks ago, I forget, on our show when we were talking about our guys, like the guys that we are really like putting our stamp of approval on this year. You talk about Caleb Williams, and you and I both have him very high in our rankings. I was taking him consistently when we were doing all of these startups. I was trading back to get into the back end of the first round so I could take Caleb Williams. I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say I got Caleb in 3 of the 5 listener league drafts that we did this year. I mean, a player that I was just aggressively targeting, trying to trade for in leagues where I didn't already have him. And there's a lot of excitement about Colston Loveland and Luther Burden and Roma Dunze and these young players with draft capital that we spent high rookie draft picks on. But just like we said about Sam Darnold, like we need the guy that's going to be steering the ship here. And we want to see Caleb Williams take this big step forward. But what if he doesn't? These processing issues, holding onto the ball a little bit too long, being a little bit too conservative when he's trying to push the ball downfield. If those problems continue into year 2, we assume that this kind of unified front in Chicago with Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles, and Caleb Williams all under contract, they'll probably run it back again in 2027 for better or worse. But if he's not playing well, the production isn't going to be there for him. The production isn't going to be there for the weapons in this offense as well. And that's a scary thought to have because there are a lot of people that made a lot of premium investments in this Bears offense over the offseason.
it is, and I mean, you talk about investments into this Bears offense. They gave Tyson Badgett some money, and maybe there's Kirk Cousins potential on this, because if you remember back, if you've been a fan that long, I mean, Kirk Cousins came in with the Robert Griffin Jr. draft, and Robert Griffin Jr.
Second
rookie of the
overall.
year, second overall pick, and Cousins
Yep.
with a fourth round pick. And we saw the injury in the playoffs, but I mean, it was Washington was Robert Griffith's city. Like it was ready to go, like with him as a rookie, and the injury there, and Kirk Cousins just took that job and it never gave it back. And Robert Griffin became a career backup, never got back to the level that he was as a rookie. And Caleb Williams hasn't even gotten to the level that he was playing at as a rookie. And so
Mhm.
that is an interesting thought to consider, that they've got it. Because what are the other, I mean, you've been covering the Bears training camp. From everything that I've seen, there's been some pretty glowing reports about how Tyson Badgett has been running Ben Johnson's
Oh,
offense, and
buddy.
how things move pretty, really well there. And yeah, it's, and Ben Johnson's the type too that, he knows that his job is to get Caleb Williams up to the level that Caleb Williams is expected to get to. But Ben Johnson's also confident enough in himself and enough of a perfectionist that if there's another quarterback that he thinks can run his offense and can
Mhm.
do those things, and the quarterback that he's got on the field isn't doing those things, I think that he's got a little bit more chups, like what do I want to say, like just guts maybe than a
Yeah,
typical first year head coach. I feel like Ben Johnson lives in Ben Johnson's world.
yeah, I'm with you. And would you believe me, Jeff, if I told you there was already a very loud, vocal minority of Bears fans that are already calling for Tyson Bagent to be like the Week 1 starter? Like he has
Well,
looked phenomenal in the preseason. I can't take that away from him. He's also looked good in like the little spot starts that we've seen here and there. A very marketable, nice guy. Like the city has really, really liked Tyson Bagent. But I'm not kidding when I say that there are like legitimate Chicago radio hosts that are saying that he should be the starter. I mean, we got it last year as well. Like on the Chicago Sun Times ran an article: should Tyson Bagent be the starter? I mean, it's a real thing, and that is always like the ongoing joke. Like the best football player in Chicago is always the backup quarterback, and like I remember, people clamoring for Jim Miller or whoever the backup is, and now here we are with a very loud group of Chicago fans that already think Bagent is a better quarterback than Caleb Williams.
yeah, and again, it's, I don't know. I mean, I certainly am out there. Caleb Williams is my flag plant quarterback for this year, and I think all the pieces are in place for him. I still believe in the talent. I don't think it was quite as bad as maybe the overall perception off that rookie year, and I think that he got to some of the places that we were hoping to see out of that rookie year. It just, the consistency wasn't there, but the situation that he was put in, obviously they changed that dramatically.
I agree, and I know you agree, and that's why we are very high on Caleb Williams. But what if he is a bust? All right,
What if
Jeff.
he
What's
is?
another one? What if we're wrong? What could we be wrong about?
I'm gonna say, what if Tetaroa McMillan can't get open? Because
Ooh.
that's kind of been one of the maybe the quieter stories of camp, that he's gone up against JC Horn every single day, and he hasn't really separated in, from what I have seen, the reports, in the ways that you would want to see separation out of your number one receiver, top 10 guy. I know, obviously, we saw the trade of Adam Thielen, moving him onto Minnesota and opening up. And there's been a lot of analysis about the first target share of Adam Thielen and how often Bryce Young just looked to get the ball to Adam Thielen. And I mean, Adam Thielen, he's the opposite end of Tedero McMillan when it comes to, obviously, like the physical gifts, age, but also experience and understanding on how to get open quickly against NFL defensive backs. And that is something that Tedero McMillan needs to learn how to do. And Adam Thielen was able to do that. And Bryce Young's, I think his stature plays into it a little bit, size plays into it, that he's kind of needs to lean on that first read target share a little bit. And so if McMillan is not able to beat the press coverage, not able to get open, not able to be the target volume hog that we are hoping to see, and when you're looking at him, it does seem to be the bigger receivers in the last couple of years have a little bit of a bumpier transition into the NFL, have a little bit of a disappointing rookie year relative to maybe Lad McConkey being on the other end of the spectrum of a player that is just a route savant and able to quickly release, quickly
Mhm.
get open and attack you at all different levels. I think that we see those rookies tend to perform better as rookies than some of the big receiver. We just talked about the Bears, Rome Odunze there. I mean,
Yep.
some of these other, the Bills, Keon Coleman had a very disappointing year last year. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the test case for this because, people were taking him in the first round last year, a can't
Mhm.
miss guy, and he missed his rookie year. And so that's where, what if McMillan kind of follows that path of these bigger receivers and is not able to get open?
And I think Drake London is another good example, a guy who like the underlying metrics were good. He was pulling targets, but the production just wasn't there year one. So you're definitely onto something here. And this is one where like I'm not even playing devil's advocate. I'm just like saying that you might be right on this. And I still think like long term, there's a lot to like in Tedoroa McMillan. When you look at the history of wide receivers drafted inside the top 10, you look at the history of X receivers in Dave Canales' offense. There's a lot to be excited about here. But you and I both, we don't hide it. We have a lot of friends that are beat reporters, and we reach out to them and we talk to them. And I was talking to Mike Kay not too long ago, and he said, "Yeah, like Tedero McMillan is very, very raw, and he still needs a lot of work." I'm paraphrasing here, not exact words, but said that he still needs a lot of work. Um, and yeah, this is one where like early in the offseason, I was like top 10 receiver, little target competition. They need this receiver in the offense. Like I'm putting Tedero McMillan inside my top 15. And then we start getting good buzz about other players, and I start moving other players up and moving other players up and moving other players up. And before I know it, Tedero McMillan has fallen outside of my top 20 in 2025 redraft rankings. And again, this is, the dynasty show. So from a dynasty lens, I think that if he does struggle this year and it opens up a buy window, buy Tedero McMillan because there's a lot to like in his profile. But also, I think that you are very, very right in saying that we could see a quieter than expected rookie season.
Yeah, and probably, I mean, this being the dynasty show, that's probably my approach here on this because he's my wide receiver 36 when it comes into this
Wow.
year. I mean, I'm
Wow.
pretty.
He's getting drafted, I want to say like 24 or something. Like he never makes it out of like round four in best ball
Yeah,
drafts that I'm doing.
and a lot of that is there's just a very very tight tier because I do it off projections and I've just got a very tight tier that you get down to like wide receiver 42. There's just not huge separation between wide receiver 42 and like wide receiver 23 ish. I mean that can really get really compressed down there in that tier, and I think you see that probably in drafts when you're seeing those receivers go off the board. And I know when I'm drafting, it's like you see that juicy tier of receivers sitting there, and you're like, I need to get a couple of these guys because
Mhm.
I know that when this group is gone, then we're starting to talk ourselves into Demario Douglas and Cedric Tillman, those guys of the world. And
Look, it's
um,
Calvin Ridley is the fall off point. Like once Calvin Ridley's gone, it's like I missed the window. Crap. Like it happens quick. And I feel like Calvin Ridley is kind of like that last guy in ADP, like where if you can't get him, then you're trying to talk yourself into like, maybe Daniel Jones is going to make Michael Pittman good this year.
it's Judy for me. Jerry Judy's that last
Yeah.
guy.
All right. All right.
About like where
I think we
I'm seeing
draft on
rookies
different
kind of fall.
platforms, so slightly different ADPs, but we're
Yeah, I
speaking the
was gonna
same
say
language here.
because
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley's my wide receiver 17. I'm pretty high on Calvin Ridley, so
Yeah.
it
I'm
kind
talking
of
more from like ADP. It's like the middle of round 6 in those best ball drafts is when, yeah, it's Jerry Judy,
it's
Calvin Ridley.
your Jerry Judy's, your Debo Samuel, kind of like
Mhm.
those types of players are what I'm used to seeing as that back end of that tier.
And again, like when we're talking, just we're dynasty show. We want to keep a dynasty lens on this, but we're going to talk because we're so close to the season, redraft and best ball, and mixing some stuff in there. And you talk about that kind of like tight tier of wide receivers, and I feel like that's from like the late teens, kind of like into the early 30s, where you see all of these. And for whatever reason, ADP this year prefers a lot of the older guys, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, uh, Stephon Diggs, Terry McLaurin, for instance. And maybe this is just me talking to you too much, spending too much time in these dynasty streets, but I basically just got that tier upside down on his head, where I'm like, give me Travis Hunter and Jamison Williams and Ricky Pearsall and like these young, exciting, ascending players over these guys who have just been like the steady producing veterans for the last decade.
Well, and I agree with you, and I think it's really interesting, and maybe that's another place that I might be wrong because I do agree with you that like Tyreek Hill, I'm just not taking Tyreek Hill. Mike Evans,
Oh,
I'm
not
just
at all.
not taking Mike Evans where he's going. I just think that there are more interesting pieces there. It's either I run into I think there's more interesting receivers, the guy like Xavier Worthy or something like that. I would much
Right.
rather make that bet or Jameson Williams in that range, or I'm running into like Kyron Williams is sitting here or James Cook is sitting here, and once those guys are off the board, then I'm like, we're better learn David Montgomery because I don't know what else you're working with, like kind of like when those tier running backs goes. And so I feel like I'm usually in that section weighing those types of players. But you're exactly right because I think that usually in the past, like we've seen, like the Mike Williams will be like that seventh round guy, or kind of it'll
Mhm.
be the older guy will be that seventh round guy instead of being the. I mean, I guess we do have the Debo Samuels kind of there, so we do have some of that, but I feel like whenever I'm looking at the wide receivers, it's usually Jerry Judy or kind of like Jacoby Myers is kind of like the
Yeah.
last guy like off the board where you're like, uh, we're in trouble now.
Yeah, I mean, I just did. If you guys want to check it out, it's on the Football Guys live YouTube channel. I did a best ball draft earlier today with Dan Henry, and we were looking at that, and it's like you see in rounds 4, 5, and 6, you'll see like 28 of those 36 picks are going to be wide receivers, and like everybody knows, like that cliff is coming, and then everybody just gets like wide receiver drunk and tries getting them all as quick as they can before they go off the board. And the thing is, like, there aren't other positions to pivot to at that area. Like, you don't feel good about pivoting to the running backs and the tight ends, so everybody's trying to like play the same game. It's just like we're looting a store, like trying to get as
Yeah.
many wide receivers as we can before they're all gone.
Yep. Yep.
All right, let me throw another one out there, Jeff. What if the Commanders lean on Bill as a workhorse? This is one that I'm just not buying into. Like I can't like I think that there is going to be more of a three-headed committee approach here, and we've talked about this. Like I expect Austin Eckler, who was seeing 50 to 60% of the snaps last year, seeing almost all of the receiving work. I expect him to retain that role. And I think that Chris Rodriguez is going to come in on goal line work. And it's not even that I think that. Like Dan Quinn has come out and told us that that's what he's going to do. But what if we're wrong? What if Ja'Cory Cross-Keemer really is the diamond in the rough, the seventh round running back who ends up exploding, the next coming of Arian Foster, perhaps? I'm not buying into it, but what if we are wrong? I mean, this is an opportunity where, I've traded away my Ja'Cory Cross-Key merit shares. I know a lot of people have. We saw Ryan Heath on Twitter just shared that he was able to cash in a Ja'Cory Cross-Key merit share for a 2027 first round pick. Like the hype has gone completely off the rails. I'm not buying into it, but what if we're wrong?
We just talked about that wide receiver tier and where do you pivot when that wide receivers tier is going on, and that's we talked about this with Dan a couple weeks ago
Yeah.
when we talked about like the jump, the leap in ADP for Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, how he went from being like a 14th round player to like a ninth round player. And in that conversation, he said, well, is the ninth round all that different than the 14th round? Did he
Mhm.
really make a 5 round jump, or did he just move to the top of a tier when he was at the bottom of a tier? And you look at this, and if we're wrong there, and if he's the lead elite back for the Commanders for what we anticipate should be a very, very good offense, I mean, he's a first round fantasy pick, and somebody's getting him in the ninth round of your draft, and that team is going to be a problem in your fantasy league because of the value that they were able to get of this player that is a potential. I mean, if he is the every down back basically for the Commanders, that's a top 12 running back in the
Mhm.
offense that we saw last year with Jaden Daniels. And yeah, you're giving somebody a top 12 running back in the ninth round, and the rest of their team is built as almost just a bonus into their lineup because they've had the rest of their roster. Good luck. I mean, it's going to be a difficult team to beat in your league.
I've just never seen anything like this in Dynasty. Like I've seen players, these day three running backs, spike in value when they start producing. Damian
Um,
Pierce, Kyron
I've seen
Williams.
something on the same team
Okay,
because Antonio Gibson, I feel like, was
fair.
very similar to this when
I mean,
there
wasn't he a
was
third round pick though?
he was a third round pick, I think he was,
And I
but
think
that
that
was
was a much better profile. A third round pick. He went in day two. catches a lot of passes, had off the charts athleticism. I think he was a better prospect, so there was reason to buy into it a little bit. Corey Krosky Merritt, like, not great athleticism.
Well, okay.
Seventh round pick. The film is
I
good.
have
I'll
another.
give it that. But
I have a seventh round pick for you. You want a seventh round pick?
oh yeah, let's hear it.
Isaiah Pacheco.
There you go.
Isaiah Pacheco kind of he started to pick up some steam, and
He
I
wasn't he
believe
wasn't
year
getting
one
valued
he
as a high second, low first going into his rookie season, was he? I don't remember that much steam.
it was pretty, it got pretty close there, because I think it was, I want to say that was like the Jerick McKinnon Isaiah Pacheco year.
Mhm.
I want to say that's where it was that
Yeah,
year,
like
or it
I
might
can
have
think
been.
like so I talk about it all the time, and I've been wrong with this process before, but I'm of the belief that if you have a process and you are right more often than you're wrong, you stick with that process. And my kind of thing is, like, as soon as a day three running back, if you can cash him in for a second round pick, you take that. And I've had some instances that haven't worked out great, trading away some of my Kyron Williams shares, but then I also traded away and was able to cash in on James Robinson shares and Jordan Howard shares and these guys that really were flashes in the pan. And I think that is probably like the best case scenario for a guy like Corey Krosky Merritt, where you get like 1 year of good production, see it start to wane a little bit in year two, and then it's just kind of done. I don't see this being, I mean, like, Arian Foster is always the guy that we like put up on the pedestal as, like, the guy who defied the odds, but there's only been one Arian Foster.
Yeah, so Isaiah Pacheco's first year was year three for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and so he had been kind of still the lead back the year before, 119 attempts in 10 games with 517 yards, but then Pacheco really took that job, and he had 830 yards. Edwards-Helaire had 300 yards that rookie year, so that was a seventh round pick that did it. But the devil's advocate on it, though, is that if there were a position to do it, it would be running back. And but I also think too, it was interesting today because I saw some people had posted some over unders for Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt in week one and thought it was comically low. And there's some pretty big buildings in out there in the desert that are built on people thinking some things are comically low.
Mhm.
And so, there's some of that going on too.
Yeah. Corey Krosky Merritt, his over under was 21.5 yards. And just to put that into perspective, Olamide Zaccheaus, his over under was 20.5 yards. So Vegas is expecting Corey Krosky Merritt to have just as much of an impact in his offense as they expect Olamide Zaccheaus to have in his. I was trying to pull it out while you were talking about the Isaiah Pacheco spike in preseason value going into his rookie season. And I was trying to find another guy that popped into my mind. No information even available on him anymore. Darwin Thompson, another guy that I remember going very late in the draft and getting a lot of preseason buzz. People were cashing in, trading away second round picks for Darwin Thompson. Never became anything. But Jeff, let's do another one. What if we are wrong? The floor is yours.
What if Chip Kelly, Arthur Smith, Brock Bowers? First off, this would be a war crime if we get Kyle Pitts 2.0 in Chip Kelly's offense with Brock Bowers here. Kyle Pitts. There's a belief that Kyle Pitts has just always been a disappointment. Kyle Pitts had 1,000 yards and was like the third best rookie tight end season ever, and then some injury, some poor quarterback play has just never delivered on that. I mean, Brock Bowers was the best rookie season ever, and so if we get Arthur Smith level of misuse out of Chip Kelly here, that would not be good. And we've seen a little bit in preseason that might suggest that might be a possibility with the split from Michael Mayer. And again, we talked about it with Dan last night and said the expectation is, one, the Raiders put out there that they thought that they were going to make their offense very vanilla in the preseason. And then two, the Michael Mayer snaps. I think that Brock Bowers, I think we both probably expect Brock Bowers to be in the backfield or in the slot or out wide on those snaps, but maybe they don't get that creative with the usage on Brock Bowers. Maybe they do stay a little bit more in line and lower his snaps and do play Michael Mayer a little bit more.
And I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is like, hey, it's preseason. Let's see what this offense could look like if we have to go without Brock Bowers for an extended period of time. Again, we're doing this like devil's advocate to the devil's advocate to the devil's advocate thing as we've been doing on this show. But like we talked about it on the training camp report episode yesterday. And this is one that like I almost don't even want to humor like that this could happen because like it would just be it just embarrassing for them to go out and do this. But you talked about that Pete Carroll interview where like he was talking about him like Brock Bowers was his firstborn son, like just gushing, said that he was the best football player he has ever been around. So I don't expect this to happen, but then again, I didn't expect Kyle Pitts to get shelved after year one. I didn't expect, well, I kind of expected a Sam Laporta fall off, but we have seen this trend over the last couple of years where these guys come out really, really strong and then kind of fizzle away a little bit in year two when NFL teams get some film on them. I don't expect it to happen with Brock Bowers. I think he's a very, very good player. But it is a discussion worth having. Let me throw another one out here, Jeff. What if Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry fall off the age cliff this year? And this, from a dynasty perspective, there isn't a lot of value to be had. But I went out and on some contending teams and bought low on these guys. I have one team that has just like consistently been. I haven't won a championship with it, but it's been so close every single year. And Derrick Henry's on that team. And my kind of dynasty lens when I'm looking at these guys, Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara, if they're on my team, sure, I could probably cash in for like a third round pick. But at the end of the day, like I'm just going to ride them until the wheels fall off. So I'm not trying to cash in. And I think a lot of people would say like now is the time to cash in. But if I'm on a contending roster and I've got Derrick Henry, I'm hoping that he could score 25 touchdowns this year. And I'm hoping Alvin Kamara can do what he did last year, where he was the RB2 in PPR before getting hurt. And that's what I'm hopeful of. But Father Time is undefeated. And maybe it happens this year. Maybe it happens 5 years from now. But what if Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara just face plant? Just fall off the backside of the age cliff this year. It can absolutely happen. And it's not something that I'm expecting, but it's something that I am a little bit cautious and scared about.
Yeah, and I mean, we need to be real about Alvin Kamara's situation in a New Orleans offense that I think most everybody expects them to be just about the worst offense in football. I think in PPR you can still envision Alvin Kamara getting himself there because they kind of need to use him
Mhm.
in the passing game, and I think that part of it's looking at Alvin Kamara. I feel like the bet on Alvin Kamara this year is that in the middle of the season or around Halloween or so, the Saints will be a little bit realistic and they will know where they're headed. And Alvin Kamara will be plucked down into a Patrick Mahomes offense or
Mm.
something else that might be like that second half turbocharge for that playoff run. Kind of the first half kind of grinded away with the PPR and he gets his 7 catches because that's all that offense can do. And then the second half, the back half, you have an opening in an elite offense or just an offense that wants to try to win a Super Bowl says, let's go out there and get Alvin Kamara because there were some rumblings, whispers about the trade market last year in the middle of the year with Alvin Kamara on the Saints potentially looking to move on there. And we have seen Kendry Miller, there's been some excitement around the Saints with Kendry Miller. So maybe it is the type of thing where the Saints are realistic about where they're headed and they pull the trigger on that. I mean, devil's advocate is this is just a death march year for the Saints, and you just don't want anything on this offense because the quarterbacks just don't allow anything to blossom and bloom, and you're just done there. And then I think on the Derrick Henry side of it, I think that there's the age cliff. Is this the type of thing of like maybe like Keaton Mitchell's healthy, he starts to chip away at this, the passing offense kind of continues to develop, Lamar Jackson runs the ball as well, and you just don't really need Derrick Henry. Or the other part of it might be the complete opposite end where the Saints are the worst team in football. Maybe the Ravens are the best team in football. And they're saying, we're
Right.
looking at the playoffs here. We want to make sure this guy's healthy, ready to go. And you get into the back half of the fantasy year and the Ravens are just cruising and
Hmm.
they peel back off a little bit on Derrick Henry and start to save him a little bit for that playoff run. You hit your fantasy playoffs, and instead of him getting his 20 plus touches and 2 touchdowns, it's like 15 touches and 60 yards. And if he doesn't score a touchdown, then you're looking at 6 PPR points.
I want to unload on you with rebuttals to everything that you said, Jeff, but in the spirit of this show, what if we're wrong? And you're right. All the things that you just said. I mean, like I could point to Alvin Kamara's 15 and a half points per game with Spencer Rattler last year and say that I'm not concerned about it. I can point to Derrick Henry, the dip in usage last year, but the uptick in efficiency and touchdowns. But I'm not going to do that because what if we're wrong? Spirit of the show. All right, Jeff, bring us home. What's one more? What if we are wrong about?
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers. What if Aaron Rodgers is just done? Like done. The Peyton Manning the last year where Peyton Manning was able to survive because he could read the offense, but also Brock Osweiler was taking the job, and Brock Osweiler, we know how that turned out, but it was just so bad that Peyton Manning was just done and not able to do much. And there's been other instances with, Tom Brady stopped before he got quite there, but we've seen some other older quarterbacks that last year can be pretty brutal. I'm pushing back on. I think that there's a lot of people that think that Aaron Rodgers is that already, and I do push back on that because I think he definitely in the fantasy sphere, but I think just in general, he was a little bit better last year than maybe some people realize. But I'm looking at this offense, and I've got an awful lot of DK Metcalf because I think that DK Metcalf is going to be his Devontae Adams from the past. And kind of we look at it, we talked last night again about Caleb Johnson not really taking off, and I think this offense might pass the ball a little bit more than the expectation might be around here with Aaron Rodgers. I kind of think we might be headed for like that late career Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh, where everything was just out of the shotgun and everything was a short pass to Deontay Johnson, and everything was that in that offense. I feel like that we might
That was
see
like the
that
most
this offense.
aesthetically unpleasing offense I ever had to watch in my life. That last
Yeah.
year of Ben, and that was the year. I want to say Najee Harris had like 98 receptions or something like that because like he
Yes.
couldn't push the ball. Like it was just a wet noodle of an arm. That was awful. And if we're in for that again, I don't know if Steelers fans will do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, for me, my personal, I've taken Rodgers as my quarterback 3 in 3 quarterback best ball drafts. Kind of like he's the last guy that's sitting there on the board sometimes, and I've been waiting really long to take quarterbacks. And so, with the differences that Aaron Rodgers or like a better learn Anthony Richardson, like I'm still taking Aaron Rodgers there. But if that doesn't come out, or if you're a super flex league that you've got Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback 2.5, something like that, and it's just completely done.
Screw the spirit of the show. Aaron Rodgers looked good at the end of last year. I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't think that he's completely done. Like he's been getting good reports out of camp so far, and I think like again we talk about like the biases that bleed into fantasy football analysis all the time, and I think so many people saw early in the season when guess what, a 40-year-old guy recovering from a torn Achilles, yeah, he didn't look great, but as the season went on, got a little bit more confident on that foot, sort of looking like the old Aaron Rodgers again. I don't think we're ever going to see 2018 Aaron Rodgers again. I think that guy is not there, but like this guy's 3 years removed from being the back-to-back MVP, and like last year we saw him just like stacking 300-yard game after 300-yard game. So I am not concerned about this one, and I think that's a good note that we can end the show on. Jeff, this was a I don't know how I describe the show. I don't know if this was fun or I don't know. We came up with the idea this afternoon, and I said let's just go ahead and do it, and definitely got my wheels spinning in ways that haven't much this off season.
Yeah, like I said, it's a therapy session a little bit. I feel like part of therapy is exploring, the other half of like the
Right.
the the quiet things that are kind of going around in your head, and put them out there, and let's explore and let's talk through and let's see what the takeaway might be off of that. And I think it's a healthy thing to do because I
Mhm.
think that we have fervent belief in the players that we believe in, our process that arrives on those players, and the analysis that we're putting out. But at the same time, I think that it's just human nature to have those thoughts and questions in your head. I think that's a healthy way to look at the process and to acknowledge that there are people that are listening to our shows and saying these guys are idiots, like the opposite of what they're saying is going to happen. And maybe give them some voice too in this all.
Well, I have a challenge to anybody listening to this show. If you're on YouTube or if you're on Apple, let us know what show we should do next week because, looking at the calendar, we probably should have saved like the super deep waivers, sleepers. episode for next week, like right before the season kicks off. But we already screwed up and did that one last week. So I personally, Jeff, I don't know about you. I don't have a good idea for like a show before week one, like the week zero show.
We're
So if you're listening to the show on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you leave your reviews, leave your comments. Let us know what you want us to talk about next week, and we'll hopefully be able to fit that in. But I want to thank you so much, everybody who has taken the time to watch throughout this entire off season. For people who are just tuning in for the first time too, we've got like months worth of shows that you can go back and watch, talking about this rookie class, talking about dynasty game theory, some really fun stuff throughout this offseason. So you can check that out here on the YouTube channel, podcast feed, wherever you're listening to. But I want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.